Hi, I'm Daily Press Editor Steve Hunt, and thank you for joining us today on a Facebook Live discussion that reporter Matt Cave is going to have with the Apple Valley Mayor Scott Nassif. Scott, thanks very much for coming. We appreciate it.
All right.
And,
thank you for having me stop by.
Best of luck on Election Day with Measure Rev.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. Initially, I know in the morning video today, if you guys watched that, we initially said 4 o'clock. Scott got here a little bit earlier, and we're going to do it now. So we'll just go right into it.
Sure, man.
The first question I have is, why did the town decide it was necessary to take the water system by eminent domain?
We had a lot of feedback from our constituents and Apple Valley regarding the escalation of water rates, the ability for the town and the community to invest. And it's been actually an issue for many, many years. The town initially took a lot of steps in working and trying to contact and working on behalf of our residents and our ratepayers at the California Public Utilities Commission, the CUPC, really to no avail. A lot of rules had changed in the subsequent years since 2009, allowing private water systems to kind of take advantage of the rules and regulations that the PUC set forth, i.e. Surcharges. Many of our residents are seeing a lot of surcharges. Those are sort of a recent thing. If they don't make the revenues that they expected, they can charge a surcharge. Mm-hmm. So those help escalate the rates. And in reality, it's two different models. There's, as many folks that I talk to recognize or understand, 88% of all water system and water deliveries are done through municipality or community owned. They're regulated by a board of directors or a council in their local communities, and there's no profit or corporate overhead or taxes involved. So the service is direct service. The model that we have in Apple Valley is a private service that's regulated by a state government, mm-hmm. the California Public Utilities Commission, and they rightfully so or have some profit margin built in, but the incentives for investment are different, to grow the system rather than what the community might do, which is to expand or work on economic development. So in that case, over time, the council finally made the decision that the public ownership mm-hmm. was the best model, as all our neighboring cities have, okay. For Apple Valley.
Okay. So under public ownership, Assistant Town Manager Mark Puckett has stated that the town could possibly lower rates as much as 15% if they take the system. Beyond rates, though, what does public ownership mean? Public ownership of the water system mean for Apple Valley?
Public ownership means basically the local residents, the ratepayers, Apple Valley would own the system. I mean, it's owned and operated by the system. Decisions are made through the council, through the community. Rates are run through a 218 process, which means we put that out, Prop 218, Proposition 218, and that's given out. We do a public hearing for rates increases and also for the services provided. And so that, again, that's a different model than what's currently done. The rates are basically submitted to the Public Utilities Commission currently, and then the decision is made at that level. And so, that's something that, technically, I guess if our residents want to, as we had in the past, represent our residents, go to San Francisco mm-hmm. and try to negotiate or spiel their case to the Public Utilities Commission, they yeah. could. This is more of an
they can come to you.
They come to us, yeah. And if we don't run and we don't do things right, they can vote us out of office. That's pretty much the biggest difference. You can't vote anybody in or out of Liberty Utilities or a private utility company, and you can't. And a Public Utilities Commission, those are not voter or legislative oversight. It's the governor that appoints those. So mm-hmm. there's really no recourse if your system is not run the way you want. Where a public system, like I said, 88% of the systems out there are run, you have a recourse with your council, with your staff, and with your community on how to deal with it.
Okay. To go back a little bit farther, is it true that the town attempted to buy the company from Park Water prior to the sale to Carlyle Group?
We'd always...
What occurred during that situation?
We kind of inherited the private water system. Rancho's water was actually part of the Rancho's development for many years. I moved here moved to Apple Valley in '59. It had always been that way, and the water system was provided really initially at no cost to the residents. And eventually it was just a meter cost of $50 every 2 months, all the way up into the early '90s. And it was done that way to help inspire development and to inspire residents to come to town. Well, when it got sold, originally when the assets got sold off, Park Water, which is an independent owner, which actually operated differently than the current investment type ownership, bought it, and for 20 years the Wheeler family owned Park Water, which was a third of the whole system. Missoula, Montana, and City of Industry, so a few cities along that area were part of it. So we really became 1/3 of the Park Water system under a private water company. And at that time, all through that period of time, we'd always expressed interest in ownership, and there really wasn't any interest on the owner's part to give that back to us. We weren't having the issues at that time that we did now, but we knew, or I would always say we personally, and some of us that kind of know how that works, saw the train coming down the tracks at some point, and knew that we tried very hard. And in fact, when they sold the system to Carlisle Group, I met with the principals along with our town manager in Washington, D.C. to express our concerns about the operation and our desire to purchase that system. Our system.
The principals of Carlisle?
Yes. And so it's been an ongoing effort on the town's part to purchase our portion of that system.
Even prior to 2011.
Oh yes.
It kind of ramped up.
It's been,
So as of August 31st of last year, the town has spent more than $1.5 million on acquisition related costs. The projected total stands at about $3.5 million right now, or at least of that last transparency report. Recently, the town protested the Mesa Crest purchase, and they also commissioned Dr. Christopher Thornburg to provide an analysis of Mark Puckett's financing figures for acquisition. Those obviously all cost money. I think it's safe to say that that number is higher than 1.5 million now. Can you give us a total on acquisition cost to date?
The 1.5, keep in mind, a total, that also includes all the efforts we had at the Public Utilities Commission.
Correct. Yeah.
It isn't just on acquisition of the water system. It was in working with trying to reduce rates. We had to, in many cases, we had brought the Public Utilities Commission down to Apple Valley. We had sent attorneys, sent representatives up there over the last 5 years. So it's several years of accumulation of that. Only about half of what you're speaking of is regulated or currently in attorney's fees, which, if I remember right, is somewhere around $500,000 as part of what the real acquisition costs are since August. That's attorneys,
attorneys. From what I saw in Mark's presentation, the transparency report presentation, attorneys' fees at that point totaled, I think, $974,000.
Yeah.
So,
and a lot of that was towards the acquisition.
Yeah. So basically, I'm just kind of wondering. I mean, Mark, when he gives these,
there's a lot of work
involved. There's a lot of work
involved,
and there's a lot of factors that play into it. Mark included a lot of costs into the total cost.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, we're trying to be as transparent.
Obvious. Yeah. So I'm just wondering if you know what that total cost is now.
Since then, we have not incurred a lot of attorney's fees since that last transparency report. We're still in the court process. We're due to go to trial in late June, early July.
Yeah, you have a hearing
and this is one of the reasons we put Measure F on the ballot at this point in time, because if the community is not willing to finance the system, then we'll have to make some decisions on, how we move forward and what we do, and how we want to handle that in the future. So that's why we're at the point we are right now. So no, there hasn't been a lot of increase besides what you mentioned, the 25,000 that we hired. We thought that was important. Obviously, the folks from Liberty Utilities feel that this is obviously a profitable endeavor for them, so they put in much more money than we can imagine, in this effort, which entitled to do, and we certainly understand why they're doing it.
Yeah.
But you know, that's where we're at today, to look at and make sure that the public's informed, and that's a lot of the cost too, is informing the public exactly what's going on, and that they understand what the efforts are and what we're trying to do.
Okay. So going back to that $1.5 million number, we'll keep it at that. Why did the town spend that amount on acquisition before going to the voters? And would you do it differently if you could go back again?
Keep in mind, you know, we did a lot of preliminary work on what the community was looking for. Again, we had a lot. Every time the rates went up, and there was a rate request to the Public Utilities Commission, our council chambers would fill. Our phones would ring off the hook. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? We did, and of course, like I said, a lot of that is us going to the Public Utilities Commission to fight that. You know, transportation, attorneys' costs, and so I said there's quite a bit of that is for that.
Sure.
And it's over a long period of time. At some point, you have to make that decision to move forward. And when we did, there was not a rule that you had to go to the vote of the people to finance.
Right.
If we raised rates or if we caused new fees, we would have to ask for the vote of the people, which there's enough costs and reduction in profit, taxes, and corporate overhead to pay the bond measure without raising taxes or fees. So there was no real need to ask the voters, because really they had already spoken to us both in council chambers. We've done surveys, and the surveys both that we came back were 75% of the folks supported changing the model again from a private ownership regulated by the Public Utilities Commission to a public ownership regulated and controlled by the community, which is what most people do. So that's the way we moved. Subsequently, you know, Liberty put a campaign together, and they spent, as today's report came out last night, $1.5 million to put Measure V and support Measure V on the ballot to ask voters to vote on the financing of that. And that allowed them to, again, put up a fight for this. And again, we understand it, what's going on. We're really the only city in California that actually has to vote on financing.
Right, because that financing is not just Measure F, it's the financing of any...
It's financing of anything, any endeavor or any acquisition that we have over 10 million, and that was put on. That's what Measure V says.
And you're the only municipality in California that has that kind of...
Currently, yeah. Usually financing for, again, unless you're, this is a revenue bond, so the revenues from the entity is what pays the bond. So taxpayers don't pay. Anybody who's not on Liberty Utilities Service doesn't pay. It's only the funds that come from the rates that are currently charged.
Okay.
So there was really no, you know, that's kind of not normal to go out and ask for permission to finance. But in reality, we're not really, we understand, and folks this way, they can also have a voice on that. One of the concerns personally I had, and some other people did, is it's not necessarily a fair fight. You know, Liberty and a private can spend and do and say whatever they want in a campaign. The town is restricted to just information only. They cannot advocate, they can educate. And so the town, and they're only limited on how much they can educate and how much money they can spend based on what they've done in the past and the type of things that they've done in the past. So then some of the community members and myself, we've all worked together to try to help people understand with the limited resources we have and put a campaign together.
What sort of disadvantages are there for you as a municipality when you can't campaign, when you can only present information, and your political fight is against a private entity that really isn't hampered by those restrictions?
Yeah, they're not hampered by information. They're not hampered financially. They can take things that aren't necessarily in context, okay, and put that together and put that out for the folks to digest. The town, when they put information out, it needs to be accurate and it needs to be informational. And so, and I think kind of the proof's in the pudding. We're not being challenged on the information we're putting out. We're being challenged in other ways on whether we're able to run the system, or those kind of things, whether we're actually honest, where I'm being classified as a politician, and you get those kind of things. So it's a little bit different scenario, it's more of an attack situation than it is a defend. So we're finding ourselves, instead of giving out information, we're trying to defend ourselves, i.e., that's why we had Dr. Christopher Thornburg give his report, to give a more accurate presentation of what we're trying to accomplish, and take the figures and actual figures that are coming out and have them digested, then take hypothetical numbers that really aren't related to what we're doing, and put that out to the public, which does not, I think is an injustice as far as information. But we only have limited resources to get that information out.
Sure. Okay, let's see. So, if you could, you sort of did, you actually already did this. I was going to ask you to explain the role Measure V played in creating Measure F, but you kind of did that already.
Yeah, and that was, yeah.
But it's an interesting situation, because the town had Measure W.
Right.
And they put that on the ballot kind of as an opposing measure to V. And now obviously you were against Measure
and
V.
Coincidentally, they both passed.
Yeah, they both
and Measure
both
W is under the same criteria as far as information that Measure F is, and it still passed. So you had the town that, when they put Measure W on it, again, it was an information, we can only provide informational. And obviously that was in opposition, because it changed the way financing could be done in the town, give an alternative to the voters. And both of them passed, and of course Measure V got an extra, I think 8 or 10% more of the vote, which trumped the Measure W.
Correct.
So that was, again, we understand that, again, we know going into this, it's not necessarily a fair fight. So it's
it just seems like it's an interesting scenario, because you were against Measure V in November, and now the measure that was created out of Measure V is what you're now fighting for. It's sort of interesting that not a flip flop, but just the turn in, and also from Liberty's perspective too. Like, they fought very hard to get Measure V passed, and now with it passed, what it created, now they're fighting against. And I just find that to be an interesting situation. And I wonder if let's hypothetically speaking, had Measure W passed, and we were now at this point, is there an opportunity to still go to the voters? Would the town do that?
It could have. I mean, that was part of the Measure W, gave that option to go to the voters, have a public hearing, had a lot of different options for the council to choose. We would have been able to do more of an educational process. It would have been more of an even type of information that goes out to the voters and to the ratepayers. So keep in mind that Measure F only authorizes the ability for the town to move forward. It doesn't lock us into purchasing, doesn't lock us into anything.
It doesn't lock you into obtaining the water system.
No, it doesn't,
either.
and it doesn't prohibit.
About that.
And it doesn't prohibit Liberty Utilities from continuing to fight, which I'm sure they will. Just like they did.
It only creates the financing mechanism.
It only creates the ability to say, yes, town, if you are able to get these certain avenues that are, if you're able to acquire it in this certain way, then you can proceed. Now, there's some information out there that we're going to charge $500 more a year, and that it's going to be 12%. All these crazy numbers. Well, the actuality is, if it gets to that point and the world's collapsing, we could pull out at any time. We could pull out of the purchase at any time, even up to the end. So we're not. I always try to let folks know we're not doing this kind of brain damage to hurt our consumers, to hurt the community, or to hurt the ratepayers. We're doing this only in an effort to help them, at lower rates, have a predictable future. Because in reality, businesses and economic development depends on stability. And currently, we're being told, homeowners are feeling it. We don't have the faith and stability in the future rates and what's going to happen in our water delivery system. You know, it's already been sold twice. Is it going to happen again? What is going to happen? So investors, homeowners, all take a step back and think about what's going on. When it's community owned, they're involved, and so that makes it a little bit more stability moving forward. And that's where a lot of support comes from in our community. A lot of folks have come in our residents are very business savvy and come from the business world and are retired and understand that stability is a key for economic development, and that's one other reason, not just rates. So are we going to move forward?
What I was getting to earlier with the what else does it mean to the town?
Yeah, it means those things as well. So are we going to create instability by raising rates? I doubt that. I know personally, I can only speak for myself. I wouldn't move forward on that. I don't think the council would. We are nothing's for certain. You know, anything you do is a risk. We are trying to take the lowest risk possible moving forward. Okay. So that's the philosophy at least I have, and I think the rest of the council does. Okay. You know, it's kind of unusual when you have all 5 members are working hard, you know, for the same goal. So I hope that sends a message that, you know, and we're not, and you know, I think people think that we haven't done the research and we've done everything we can do. And again, this is not something new. It isn't something we just came up with last August. This is something we've been talking about for many, many years. Yeah.
So recently, one of the recent things that has come up from town officials is that if they get the water company, they plan to keep the majority of the employees. I think one of the between 35 and 37 employees, with after elimination of like kind of top executives. What I'm hearing in the community though is that there's concerns over how to fund salaries and benefits related to those employees, including an increase to pension liability. I was wondering if you could discuss that.
First of all, our acquisition model doesn't includes their current financial obligations to their employees. Keep in mind, we're only deducting, our financial model only takes out profit, taxes, and corporate overhead, which is the millions of dollars that they send to both the corporate office and the City of Industry in Canada. So it does not include salary adjustments at their current level. Okay. And we can't guarantee everybody's going to come over. You know, it's still a free country, so they can choose whether they want to work for the town. But I can tell you, all the employees, the operation and operational part of it, and I'm not sure how much of the management part of it. I would imagine we need a lot of those folks to come in, because remember, this is an ownership change, not a company change. Yeah. So just like when Park Water owned it, Carlisle owned it, and Liberty owned it, they kept the same employees. That's an ownership change. So the incentive is to bring it over. As far as wages being different, you know, and I've talked to our public works director who came over from the largest public works water system, which is in Riverside. I think it's Western Auto Parts business, but Western Water.
You're talking about Greg Snyder.
Yeah, Greg Snyder, who that system's 8 times the size, and we've all had a conversation with him at a point in time, and he says, you know, it's an industry just like any other industry. The wages are very comparable between private and public, because if one was lower and one was higher, all the employees would float to the other side. So, you know, so they're very comparable, and he's looked at the wage structures, and it would be there isn't an increase, you know, there isn't a drastic increase or decrease in bringing those folks on into a public system.
Are the salaries?
Salaries are basically similar. Yeah.
Are the salaries paid for through the water rates?
Yes.
It's all kind of contained system, within that.
Just like they currently are, it's all part of the what they call water operations. Okay. So just like our park system or any other system, you know, that would be a separate entity that would all be included in that system. Okay. So there's some economies of scale, though, when you do get into a municipality that you have folks that are already doing building. Let's say we're already doing trash and sewer, so we maybe include that billing and again bring some of those costs down. Okay. So, and there might be opportunity to, you know, hopefully, you know, that all that works out with the employees that are currently doing that there, and
In
bring
the
them
other
in,
departments.
because you still need to do the same things that are being done now.
Mhm.
Do we need corporate officers and investment officers in Canada? Probably not. You know, so that was true when Missoula took on their own water system. There's
Yeah.
some we got a list of executives that were terminated. At the Canadian through Algonquin.
Through Algonquin, yeah.
Yeah, so-
Once that was taken over,
Yeah, because there
Which
was
is-
no
they're about to start operations.
I
I've heard.
think they've gotten there. I always call it the keys to it within the last week or so.
Okay.
So yeah.
So, in the event Measure F doesn't pass,
Right.
what happens to water rates in Apple Valley, in your opinion?
We don't know. First of all, if Measure F doesn't pass, we'll have to regroup and figure out how we're going to move forward, or if we're going to move forward. How there's a lot of decisions that the council will have to make. What are our options? Whether it be legally challenging the vote, or legally challenging Measure V. There's a lot of things that the council will have to really
So there
digest.
are avenues going forward if it doesn't pass.
There's possible, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, obviously, without the ability, we've also got to consider if the majority of people do not want in Apple Valley, don't want us to move forward for whatever reason, that's something that the council will consider too. But then, if the town, eventually abandons the idea, then we have no control over the future,
Sure.
and neither do the residents.
Of Apple Valley.
Right.
You answered that one.
What's that?
The one you just.
Oh,
that was
okay.
my next question.
Oh, all right. Sorry, I didn't
Um,
answer all the questions
No,
before you
you're,
asked.
you're just being prophetic. It's okay.
Okay,
Um,
I'm anticipating.
so this will be my last question before just kind of offering you a couple seconds for final thoughts or anything.
All right.
But there's also in the town been rumblings of rising property taxes as a result of town ownership. People think,
Oh.
and people have stated during public comment that they believe their property taxes are going to go up as a result of this. I was wondering if you could address that issue too, and from the town's perspective, how this how the acquisition is funded and where that money comes from.
Okay. First of all, there is no tie to property tax whatsoever. I want to be perfectly clear on that. In fact, in Measure F, it states on there no property tax and no taxes will be incurred because this is a financing and we're not asking for that. Obviously, property tax is controlled by the county, but there's no additional taxes on there. No, whether you're on Liberty Utilities service or not, it does not affect taxes whatsoever. Sales tax, property tax, any other tax you can think of. It does not affect that. All the bond proceeds will be paid for out of the current rates. And we've had several presentations showing that what happens with government, we're only, and we have to, by law, can only charge the cost of service to deliver the water. We can't charge more. I had someone ask me the other day, we're going to borrow more and put the other money into, other parts of the town. We cannot, legally we can't. And I'll tell you that we could go to jail for taking and misusing funds and putting funds in different areas. And other you've seen cities do that, whether by mistake or on purpose,
Yeah.
not account for fund transfers and those kind of things. So every dollar that is collected has to go back to in the relation to water service.
Yeah.
So the money that's being paid, and currently I looked at the financials that just came out, I think Wednesday night. Get my days mixed up because they're all blending together.
You're talking about Liberty's.
They made
annual report.
$5.2 million in net profit off of $22 million in approximately $22 million in gross earnings, which is the amount of rates that they pay. That town and municipalities cannot make a profit, so that would go towards debt service. About $3.5 million. I don't have exact numbers in my head because they're not in front of me, but about $3.5 million. It's closer to 4, but if you deduct what the town would normally get in property tax and taxes, that just brings it down to about 3 would go away because the town, municipalities, and government don't pay taxes. They don't pay income tax. They don't have, so that would go away. And then also the corporate, there's some corporate transfer monies that, it's in dispute as to actually what they're used for. But if you look at what happened in Missoula, most of it goes towards corporate salaries and those kind of things, which is somewhere in the neighborhood, I'm gonna guess, you know, I know Mark shows it on the high end at 4 million, I'm gonna say at the low end, 3 million would go away, because we don't need to support corporate offices or corporate structures or investment groups, and, you know, cause that's a cost of doing business, which they're incurring, but those are borne by the ratepayers. Now, we don't need to use that money. So some of that will be transferred into our, you know, we do need to operate, the system, so I'm sure some of that will be distributed through us. I'm not gonna be, you know, kidding, but it just goes away, but those funds are reduced, and that is what's used to pay the bond.
Through the elimination of things like, Mark says the corporate office in Downey that Liberty has.
Yeah, well, we would not need to pay them. I mean, one of the concerns we had, actually losing, and they've said, and you know, after losing Missoula, Montana, there's some corporate expense that Missoula was paying that the rest of the system may have to incur. I mean, not as much as what they lost in there, but there is still some expense that may be borne by the town, and that's why we're concerned about Flint Ridge system, the Mesa Crest system, the Yermo system, because those are systems that they took under almost receivership. They were, you know, basically bankrupt, and they're paying.
I believe Yermo was in receivership.
Yeah, they were.
They don't. The town has stated that Mesa Crest is a failing system. Liberty doesn't see it that way.
It's a system that's still operational, but the investment that was supposed, the reason that the PUC got involved, because the investment that they were supposed to put in wasn't put in. So they've even agreed to put in about, now it may not be failing, but it still needs several $1 million worth of infrastructure improvement.
Through financial mismanagement of the previous owners.
So that needs to be accounted for, and when you look at the number of hookups there and the number of hookups in Yermo, you know, I'm a business guy. It doesn't make financial sense if they were just independent, all by themselves, and that's it. You know, I don't know why somebody would buy it out of the goodness of their heart and invest money in there and not get a return for 20, 30 years or however long it takes for that investment to get paid off, because you still have incurring costs moving forward. So, and that's another issue that, you know, I think when Chris Schilling was we grilled him at the town, we grilled him, we asked him some questions one time about Yermo, and he says at the current rate case at the time, which was a 27% increase a year ago, that Yermo was not in there. But he couldn't guarantee us that it wouldn't be in a future rate case, because they have to, you know, and Yermo is part of Apple Valley. I mean,
Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. There was a technical difficulty with our new camera that we have. We're still trying to work out all the bugs for that. I'm still here with Mayor Scott Nassif from the town of Apple Valley. At this point, I'm going to give you a couple minutes if you want to just kind of give any final thoughts to people who are watching before Tuesday's election.
Okay, I'm happy to do so, and obviously there's a lot of questions out there, and I do want to let folks know that they can contact me anytime. You know, get a hold of my, you know, through my private store. It's probably the easiest. Either go to leave a message at Town Hall. They can leave a message at any of my Napa stores, name and number, and I'd be happy to call back and answer any specific questions, which I have been doing over the last couple of weeks. But, you know, I want to emphasize that this is what the town council and the town is trying to do is change the model of the way water service is delivered in Apple Valley. That's the main emphasis between why we're trying to do what we're doing. Again, 88% of all water, that's why people are kind of confused, because most everybody is used to a municipal water delivery system. That's the way Victorville, Hesperia, the county, Hellendale, like I said, 88% of everyone, not just in California, United States, gets their water delivered. So a private water system, and there's some smaller private water systems, but this is, when they get to this size, and this is something that folks are trying to expand, there's economies of scale that don't necessarily, we feel, make it beneficial to the community, and this is why we think public ownership, where the public's involved, both in the rate base and public's involved in the investment, because it has a lot to do with economic development. North Apple Valley specific plan, currently, the town of Apple Valley can't invest in the water system out there, which we need to help spur our economic development. It's really up to Liberty Utilities or the private water system, but they're not going to invest, rightfully so, unless somebody gives them the money to invest out there, i.e. the property owners. So the mechanisms to make things happen are different under public versus private. So that's why we're doing it. I want to emphasize that Measure F does not lock us into a purchase. It only allows us to move forward with the acquisition. In other words, it's kind of being pre-qualified for a home loan. The town or the residents hopefully will say, go ahead, town, move forward, see what we can do to the benefit of the community. I want to ensure that I can speak for myself, and I think I can speak for the rest of the council. We won't do something that will hurt the town. We won't do something that will hurt the residents. We won't do something that will hurt the future of Apple Valley, because this really comes back to our legacy. If we do something wrong, this is something that will hang in our head forever. And on that note, if we do something, we can be voted out. Sure. You can get rid of us and start all over. You know, the town could sell it back to private. But if we can't move forward, we'll never know that opportunity that we can get there. And I think that's important to recognize that we're politicians, as we've been pointed out many times, but I feel we're willing to stick our neck out, and we have been. You've got a council that's willing to take a stand on this. The easiest thing to do for us, as I've told people, would just ignore it and let the folks deal with the water rates and the investment on their own. But I think as leaders in this community, your town council stepped up and said, we feel this is the best way to go. And it's really up to the community to either agree with us or either trust us, and we're the elected, if we were voted into office, to give those opinions and to at least give people the option and the opportunity to move forward on this. And that's the main message I wanted to get out. You know, there's a lot of information out there, hundreds of thousands of dollars of information on the opposite side saying differently, but do the research, find out for yourself, look online, look at the town's website. A lot of information there, a lot of presentations, a lot of things to read and make that judgment, and let you know that the town council this is not something we have been thinking about for just a short period of time. This has been something that's been going on. I've been on the council for 15 years, and I've been looking at it and looking how to resolve this issue for at least that amount of time. And I know the council members before me that I talked to felt the same way, that it's really the community needs to be in charge. Water is life, and the residents should be in charge of that, not a corporation in Canada or whoever else they decide to sell to in the future. So I wanted to emphasize that, and I thank you for allowing me to
Thank you for coming in. I appreciate it. And so that's it for our video, 2 videos with Mayor Scott Nassif from the town of Apple Valley. At 4:30, between 4:30 and 4:45, we're going to have Tony Penna. He is General Manager and Vice President of Liberty Utilities Apple Valley. We will be kind of doing a similar situation. We're going to talk about Measure F, talk about kind of this water saga that's been going on in Apple Valley. With him will be Liberty's Finance Manager, Eric Larson. So if you guys want to tune in between 4:30 and 4:45, we hope to see you then. And if you live in Apple Valley, make sure to get out and vote on Tuesday. Thank you.